What's going on? It's Dr. Mike Nelson here with the Flex Diet podcast. And today, we've got a special announcement that the Flex Diet certification is open today. If you're listening to this on Monday, June 16th, and I'm recording this from a undisclosed location in Europe. I got to fly over here to help an athlete for the past 4 days, and I've got a couple more days doing some stuff over here in a different country. But today wanted to do two things. Announce that the Flex Diet Cert is open and give you a short primer on the effects of protein, including two things that are rarely discussed. So, the Flex Diet Cert is your certification for nutrition and recovery. We use the concepts of metabolic flexibility and flexible dieting to help you design stuff either for yourself or for clients on how to master nutrition. And we do this with more of a habit-based approach. It is more on the physiology side, but we do bake the psychology aspect into the cert. So you're working with clients, not against their psychology, because we all know that compliance is a main thing. But we want to make sure they're getting information on what to do when they are compliant. So the goal was to solve that problem and also make it a flexible framework. So the client themselves actually helps dictate the direction, but it's not necessarily a free-for-all. The example I use is if you are a new client and maybe you've got a coach and the coach is saying, all right, this is like bowling. We expect you to become perfect with your nutrition on day one. So if you were going to the bowling alley, this would be like trying to bowl a strike on day one. It's not going to happen. It's also unrealistic, and both of you are going to be mad at each other. It's not going to work well. However, maybe we inflate the little bumpers and stick them in the gutters. And so now your goal is just to get a ball down the alley and knock down some pins, right? So that's more progress than you've made in a long period of time. So we're going to rig the system a little bit in the client's favor, and it's going to be a learning progress or learning as they go. But the client's going to be able to make progress because they are going to get some wins. They're going to get closer to adding more muscle, increasing their performance, and improving their body composition. Like I said, we do that based on the concepts of metabolic flexibility, how well your body can use carbohydrates, how well it can use fat, and how well it can switch back and forth between those two, and the idea of flexible dieting, so that you have options. Because a lot of times, this is going away, which is good. But in the coaching world, it's, hey, just do this one thing. And they just keep hammering the square peg into the round hole. So we want to make it a flexible way so that clients do have more options because real life is busy. They've got a lot of stuff going on. And within it, we go over 8 different interventions, everything from protein, fats, carbohydrates, to exercise, NEAT, micronutrition, sleep, and more. And then we give you the explicit 40 action items. Again, this is set up in a flexible framework, but we also tell you exactly, here's where you would start in this case. Here's your options here. Try this or try that. So that you as a coach have complete confidence that you are giving your clients a good starting point. We have about 60% of people go through the cert are actually coaches or trainers, and about 40% are actually fitness enthusiasts who just want to learn more about their physiology and how to get better results themselves. We also have some great expert interviews from, I think we're up to 11 different experts now. Everyone from protein metabolism with Dr. Stu Phillips, Dr. Jose Antonio, Dr. Mike Ormsby. We've got flexible dieting, Dr. Peter Fishman, Dr. Eric Helms, sleep with Dr. Dan Party, metabolic flexibility, Dr. Hunter Waldman, and many others. So the concept today that is also taught in the Intervention 1 and the Flex Diet Cert, which you can go enroll in right now if you want. It's open to June 16th, 2025 through midnight Pacific Standard Time, June 23rd. The best place is to get on the newsletter. So we'll put a newsletter link below. It's free to join the newsletter. We've got a ton of information on the Flex Diet Cert and even just teaching you some of the concepts itself. If you're not in a position to pick up the cert right now, you can still get onto the newsletter and still get a ton of value of things you can go out and apply right away. So one of them today is the first intervention is protein. And I think one of the things that gets maybe not overemphasized is the dietary intake of protein. Now, one of the main reasons that this is the first intervention, like I said, is based on something called coaching leverage. So coaching leverage is a trademark concept we teach on the Flex Diet Cert, and it's the physiologic response times the psychology response of the client, or the client's ability to change. So we account for both the physiology, like you want to be doing things that get you closer to adding more muscle, improving your body composition, improving performance. You don't want to be doing things that are not going to move the needle physiologically, but we also account for the client's ability to change. The example I use all the time is sleep. It's very hard to get clients or anyone to make wholesale changes in their sleep. It's just a very hard process with a lot of moving parts. Because at the end of the day, if you're only in bed for 5 hours, yes, we can optimize your sleep a little bit better. We can do things to help you, but you just need more time in bed. There's no way around it. Just like training. At some point, you're going to have to lift the weights, push things around, do the work. Same thing in cardiovascular training. At some point, you're going to have to do the work on the rower, on the bike, or run, those things. So there's never going to be any way of getting around that. So we take into account the coaching leverage, and it turns out protein rates out at number 1. So that's intervention number 1, sleep rated dead last at 8. That's just because it's very hard to get people to change their habits of sleep. So that was more on the psychology side. So we want to rig the system in your favor. So we're going to talk about protein is going to be number 1. Within protein, there's 2 ways to get more amino acids into the muscle. And the first way I'm sure you've heard about all the time, and I've talked a ton about it because I think it's absolutely fascinating. This is a process called muscle protein synthesis. Literally taking amino acids, the building blocks of protein, and stuffing them into muscle tissue to make it bigger, better, and stronger. And there's been a lot of great work that's been done in this area using stable isotope methods and other methods. And we've got a fair amount of data in this area. And we know that if you meet these 2 requirements in general, that you will see more amino acids show up in muscle. So on the feeding side, those 2 things are you need a certain amount of leucine, which is probably 2 to 3 grams in humans. So leucine is an essential amino acid. And think of this as starting the assembly line. We need to have the assembly line to make more muscle. We need to start said assembly line. Number 2 is essential amino acids. We might be able to get by with as little as 6 grams. We could probably get by and maybe saturate that out at maybe 12 to 15 grams. I would default to other buddies like Dr. David Church and people who do research on this stuff all the time. But that's my understanding. Then simply we need raw materials. We need other essential amino acids to stuff into the muscle tissue. So we have our assembly line that's running. It's been started by leucine, so the switch is on. But now if we're going to make something, we need raw material. And those raw materials are essential amino acids. Third, we need to get energy from somewhere. We could have an advanced biochemical discussion about maybe diverting energy from fat to do this, which could be dietary fat or subcutaneous fat or fat from somewhere else in your body. Or if we want to maximize that entire process, we probably need a caloric surplus. But we need energy to run it. So we won't talk much about where we get the energy from right now. But the 2 main things are outside of energy, turning the assembly line on, so 2 to 3 grams of leucine, and essential amino acids, which we may be able to get by with as little as 6 essential amino acids there. And leucine is an essential amino acid. If you're consuming things like a supplement, 20 grams of whey protein has both those requirements. If you're consuming a vegan supplement, depending upon the source of the vegan supplement, but if you go with a higher quality source, such as rice protein, you will cover both those requirements if you go with a much higher dose. So you probably need around 40 grams of rice protein to get that response. This is because you need, again, enough leucine and you need enough essential amino acids. So in the Flex Diet Cert, we do have a little bit of a shortcut that you can help do some certain things if you're only getting lower amounts of plant-based proteins. But for our discussion, 40 grams of rice protein, there's been a couple studies done on this, will be sufficient. So that takes care of the feeding side. And what we see is that this will acutely bump up muscle protein synthesis for a couple hours. And that's great, right? If you want to accumulate more muscle, you literally need to take amino acids and stuff them into muscle tissue. Now again, there is a breakdown side of this equation. So we need what's called net protein synthesis. So just like if you always add things to your bank account and you don't take much out, you're going to have more in your bank account. If you start making a lot of withdrawals and you don't have much going in, you're going to be negative. So on the catabolic side, we will talk about that maybe later at a different time, but we'll assume now that's negligible for our point in our conversation right now. But at the end of the day, we do want to make sure the net is positive. We're sticking more in than we are taking out. So on the putting more in side, we've got dietary protein. And if we cover essential amino acids, including 2 to 3 grams of leucine, we're going to be good, assuming we get calories from somewhere. But that spike will only last for a couple hours. And the other part that I think gets forgotten a lot about this, and I know Dr. Stu Phillips had a great post recently on this, is a component of exercise. So while one of the questions I get about the Flex Diet Cert is this only nutrition? And the answer is, but not really. We have modules on NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis. We have a whole module on sleep. We have a whole module on exercise. And the reason I included the exercise is that you need a stimulus to apply to the system or to the organism in order for it to change. Having more protein is great, and there's lots of other benefits to that, especially with satiety and trying to keep calories lower and everything else, thermic effect of feeding. But if we want more muscle, which I would argue everybody does, or at least trying to mitigate muscle loss, even if your goal isn't more muscle, it's probably performance or mitigating muscle loss, increasing muscle protein synthesis is going to be great. So dietary protein is one way, and exercise is a huge important area number 2. And if I were to pick only one, I would actually probably pick exercise over dietary protein. And I think Dr. Stu Phillips had a similar point. And obviously Dr. Stu Phillips has done a ton of this research over the years, so I'm going to default to him on that position also. But we need a stimulus to cause the system to change. So your muscles need a reason to get bigger and stronger. Otherwise, you're just going to go backwards. So your body is going to be like, hey, we don't need any of this muscle tissue. We're not really using it to a high degree, so just get rid of it. It's very metabolically expensive to hold on to. So you need to give your body a reason to keep it or even slightly increase it. And when we look at it in the context of muscle protein synthetic response, we find that exercise will increase the baseline of muscle protein synthesis for 24, 48, maybe 72 hours, depending upon what type of training was done, what population. In general, the more trained you are, the less length of time you will get from that, which is why I'm a big fan of doing some type of strength training, probably at least Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Now, again, we can have a different discussion somewhere else about what is the bare minimum you would need, probably 1 to 2 hours a week. But I do think if you can get in 3 sessions, even for 45 minutes, I do think you will get a huge benefit from that. You don't have to be a complete nutcase like I am and spend 2 hours and 20 minutes in the gym on Monday and Saturday and then do 3 other sessions plus cardio and everything else. Except when I'm traveling, now it's just get the bare minimum in to stay functional. So strength training, you need to do some type of lifting heavier-ish weights. Now again, they don't have to be super heavy. Again, like Dr. Stu Phillips, Dr. Bird have shown research down to as low as 30% of your 1 rep max. So again, this doesn't always have to be heavy lifting, but you have to do some type of strength training. Let's go lift some stuff, press some stuff, carry heavy things. This will increase your baseline of muscle protein synthesis for 24, 48, or even 72 hours. So if you were to look at a graph, you have the baseline that has been shifted upwards. On that baseline now, you have your little increases, your more spikes from increasing dietary protein. And the reality is we want to do both. Now again, if it was really pressed and I had to pick one or the other, I would probably pick exercise. But the reality is you can do both, and most people are probably going to want to do both. And adding more protein at a meal, for most people, is an easier starting point than exercise. You're already eating something. We just need to change a little bit what you're actually eating. Trying to get people to exercise is a little bit more of a harder battle on the psychology side. I think there was an old study showing that for someone to be considered a lifelong exerciser, they have to consistently exercise, I want to say, for 2 years. So on one hand, that's a long period of time. But compared to your lifetime, not really that long for an investment. So if you can get through 2 years of consistently doing exercise, the data says you will probably stay being a consistent exerciser the rest of your life. So our takeaway here today is that if you want more muscle or more performance, which I'd argue almost everybody does, or you want to at least hold on to as much muscle tissue as you can, you need to, one, give your body a reason to hold on to said tissue. This is lifting weights. Again, they don't have to always be heavy, at least 30% of 1 rep max. Do some type of lifting. That will increase your baseline of muscle protein synthesis for 24, 48, or potentially maybe even 72 hours in some cases. On top of that, we want to increase our consumption of protein. Again, we can have a discussion later about bolus dose of high, 100 grams of protein, such as the Jorn Tromelin study. But I like the 4x40 approach for most people. Get 4 meals in per day of 40 grams of protein. Now that is on the higher side. That is going to take some more work. Are you probably at that flat end of the curve where adding more than that is not going to be a huge benefit? I probably agree with that. There might be some other benefits or reasons to do it. And if you're at 40 grams, even if you're using lower quality sources, odds are you're still going to be able to get enough essential amino acids and leucine in most cases. So go lift some stuff, do some exercise. That'll increase your baseline elevation of muscle protein synthesis for 1, 2, maybe 2.5, 3 days. And then have some protein on top of it, which will have a short acute spike in muscle protein synthesis that'll go back down to baseline. But then you could have another meal and it will be increased again. Now, there's a whole bunch of nuance into this, and I'm sure people who are reading all the research will poke holes in it. But if you can think of just 2 things, getting a higher amount of protein per day. Again, the timing of it probably doesn't matter as much. Again, I like doing the 4x40 approach because just eating 100 grams of protein at once is harder than it appears. And then 2, go lift some stuff. Doesn't necessarily always have to be heavy. And you will see more protein stuffed into your muscles via amino acids, and you will recover faster and also limit the amount of total muscle loss over time. If you want more information on that, we've got a whole module that talks about the intricacies of protein. We do use a lot of research, but I explain it to you in terms you can understand. And also for this round, if you have any specific questions, you'll be able to get my private email address. You can email me any questions and I will personally answer them for you. Flex Diet Cert is open today, June 16th, 2025 through June 23rd, 2025 at midnight Pacific Standard Time. If you have any questions, you can email me also. And the best place to get all the information, the links, everything else is on the free newsletter. We'll put a link to it down below, or if you're just listening to this, go to MikeTNelson.com. There'll be a newsletter tab at the top. Hop on, and you will get all the information. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Hope to see all of you in the certification. Have a wonderful day.
Did you see that?
Yes, the frog is certainly taking a beating on this show.
Yeah, it's hard to feel sorry for him. We take a beating every show.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should not use the information on the podcast for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease or prescribing any medication or other treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider before taking any medication or nutritional supplement, and with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this or any other podcast. Reliance on the podcast is solely at your own risk. Information provided on the podcast does not create a doctor-patient relationship between you and any of the health professionals affiliated with our podcast. Information and statements regarding dietary supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to therein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.